Hey there, faithful followers of the Green Township History Project. Got a little bit of an on-location treat for you today. Never done a video before, but had an opportunity to stop by and check out a really cool site. So, Franklin Furnace, Ohio Furnace, and Junior Furnace, big historical components of the Green Township history, and helped shape what we are and who we are and the landscape that we live in. And so we're exploring furnaces today. So today I went to Buckeye Furnace, and most of what we have as record of the old furnaces are lost, and the stones are gone, and all we have left are cuts on the hillside, a couple stones at Junior Furnace and Ohio Furnace. The churches remain, and we have some photos of the old Ohio Furnace, but other than that, nothing remains. Lots of slag all over the township, that's for sure. That glassy black rock you see, it was scattered all abroad. That's probably the most obvious reminder of the old iron industry. So today I'm on Little Raccoon Creek here in Jackson County, and we're going to check out Buckeye Furnace. It has been restored by the Ohio History Connection. That was the old Ohio Historical Society, and they have completely restored this, and we're going to explore it. I'll walk you through it and show you what a furnace looked like when it was in operation and how it worked. All right, so as you can see here, a lot of times you see photos of the block pyramids made out of sandstone. You can see there's a lot more to it than that, right? One of the things that you'll notice every furnace site had was, one, a hillside that a retaining wall was up against. Almost all the times this was built out of sandstone. One of the reasons why is sandstone happens to be very abundant in the Hanging Rock Iron region, and so it was easy to cut out of the hills. Junior Furnace area had a really nice quarry where a lot of it was cut out of. So we'll talk about what all these things are. So you had this structure here against the hillside, and then of course a creek down below because you needed a source of water. We'll talk about what all of these things are and where I'm walking as I get to them. But as you can see, it's not just a small building. There is a lot to it, and we'll explore all of these things. And here's a good look at almost back behind the furnace. You can tell that they cut this out of the sandstone, and the charging building is up here, and then see the retaining wall, which in this case they didn't need to build much of one. They were able to cut it right out of the face of the rock. Once you get around to the top of the furnace, at the little small hill where the retaining wall, or behind the retaining wall, you find the entrance to the charging room. And then here's the little stockyard and stock shed. And what would be held here is, you can see a little pile of old iron ore. This is what they would call big red block ore. And that's what it looked like. Guys would dig that right out of the ground, load it up by the ton, and oxen would haul it off by cart. And they show some timber here, just as an example, but there was no timber that was used in the actual furnace. They turned it into charcoal. Colliers would slow burn that for about a month, turn that into charcoal, and then have that hauled over. Now the other part of the equation was limestone, and they would also knock that out of the rock, break it up into little fine pieces, and then hold that here until charging time. Okay, so if you can imagine guys with carts loading up some of that ore, some of that black charcoal back there, and then once that limestone is broken up with that piece of equipment there and the fine pieces, they would load that stuff up and then would come down this ramp here and into the charging room. So if you can imagine guys with big carts doing this, two-wheeled carts, hand carts, almost like wheelbarrows, and they would roll that into here and then drop that down directly into the furnace, which we'll take a look at next. All right, apologize again for not much light here, but we're looking out towards the stockyard area and sitting directly over top of the furnace, fire clay below my feet, and then the tunnel head right here, which was where they would have loaded the ingredients of making iron ore down into the furnace. Now obviously this thing is sealed off, so I can't take a look down in there. But you can see they've recreated this. It would have been closer to this area when it was in use, but they would have loaded stuff into that cart, swung it around, which it will still move, and then drop it down into the hole here. Now, in earlier furnaces, they just had to do that by hand, which means you had to roll your cart up to it, kind of turn your head and drop it down in there and hope you don't get burnt. There are some old stories of guys who did fall in. I don't know how true those are, but there are stories of that happening. And so here what you have are a couple of very large boilers. Not all furnaces had these at the beginning, but by the 1850s, 1860s, they pretty much all did. The ones who didn't originally have them installed them. And so the heat coming off the furnace, of which there was plenty, would heat the water in these boilers. That, of course, would create steam. That, of course, would then be kept and taken to the machine room. And we'll talk about what happens in the machine room next. But again, looks like they've redid all of this, unless it has really withstood the test of time, this fire brick. And so here's the actual chimney for all the gases that would escape, any excess heat, and any of the smoke that would arise out of the furnace. Okay, so we were just up here, and one of the things that we talked about was those boilers. And so some pipes would have ran down maybe along the hillside here, and they would have carried steam into the machine room. This is the machine room. I suppose it will probably be dark in here. We'll see what we can do. And it ran these machines. Notice there's a very large wheel and a piston here. So captured steam, gathered pressure would push the piston. That would then push this wheel. That compressed air, actually more really hot air, and that would push into this side of the furnace. So notice here's another opening right there. So one of the things that they would cut into that opening is a Toyer hole, and that is where either hot or cold blast air would be injected into the furnace. The older furnaces were all cold blast. A lot of them were converted to a hot blast using the available heat to boil water, create steam, run the machine, and then pump hot air back into the furnace. Franklin furnace was converted in the 1840s, I think, same for Junior, and then Ohio furnace was constructed already with hot blast. By the time it was built, the technology was already there. You can kind of see a pipe sticking out there. Now that could have been from the boiler, or it could just be water drainage. I'm not real sure. When they redid this and rebuilt everything, I'm not really sure. I've never seen intact steam pipes in a furnace before, so I wouldn't exactly know what I'm looking at if I didn't see them and they weren't listed. So we just know that they were there. But that's what this whole room was for. You notice it was mostly empty, so I'm sure there was a lot more going on in there at the time. But that's what it was used for. The hot blast created for a lot more efficient iron production, just helping it get hotter and hotter and hotter and removing more of the impurities that the limestone helped flux off with slag. So, all right. So, Hope you enjoyed your tour of that part of it, and we'll move on. All right, so here's the casting room. And we'll walk a little closer here to kind of talk about what happened, or what would happen rather. So after iron and slag settled, you would have guys that would wear leather aprons, some headgear, large leather gloves, would come up to this area, and you'll notice there is some fire clay brick that lined the inside of the furnace. And so inside there would be some really hot stuff burning, and they would have a set of rocks, or stone rather, that was placed there purposefully to allow for slag to roll over top of it, and then a clay plug underneath that they would pop once the slag rolled off, and it would allow the iron ore to run down this little area and into this little sandy casting area. So the casters would dig trenches along here, and then cutoffs where the iron ore would eventually cool, and that would cause the sows and the pigs that we know of. I think I've posted a couple photos of that. Now this thing right here is a slag wheel, and it literally is a human hamster wheel. A guy would get on that and climb that thing, and what it would do is there would be a chain attached to it where they would have the slag run off, and it would paddle the slag out so that it could cool. And once it was done cooling, you would have the guys that would work this area would bust it up with sledgehammers, and they would load it up, and they would use it for filling in low areas, roadside improvements, things like that. So that's what would happen here. This was the business end of the operation. This is where things came to finish. This was dangerous place to work. One of the most dangerous jobs. Pretty much all of them were pretty dangerous, just with the heat, molten iron flowing everywhere. And the guys who worked this generally would work 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. Some furnaces sometimes had them working 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts. So it would be a 24-hour continuous operation. So we talked about slag earlier. You can see a lot of this glassy rock here. A lot of little pieces of this. If I can get in focus here. Maybe I can't. Gee whiz. Well, let me try to... There we go. Kinda. That's it. You probably see a lot of this. If you live in a township, you've seen this somewhere. Maybe in your own driveway. If you've dug any, there's probably some of it. If you go to where Franklin Furnace used to sit, which is where the Methodist Church on Big Pete sits, then you can go over that hillside, and it is everywhere. You can find huge slag, just big clods of it you can pick up there.